one of your main core areas and your expertise is green loans. Probably the topic that most investors somehow are interested in because there's a lot of things to unravel in a sense. Now lately there was an announcement that the issuance of carbon credits will be postponed. I recall, I'm not sure when it was issued, a statement at some point last year, maybe October, November, that in Q1 it's going to be the time and we will see some actual results. Now this process has been prolonged or being extended towards, let's say, the end of this year, early next year. What can you tell about this delay and why this process somehow doesn't seem to find an end with the issuance of carbon credits?
Yeah, so probably I need to start with the carbon credit market and how it evolved actually during the years. And we see a rapid growth in it. What actually created a little bit of a struggle for an international organization called Verra that verifies more than 70% of all the carbon credits in the world. We're also working with this organization, so you have to certify all the emissions that you manage to remove or reduce from the atmosphere, and only then you can generate those carbon credits. They have their own timelines, how quickly they should be doing one or another action. However, they got overwhelmed and a lot of steps in the process got prolonged by half a year and even more. And that actually made us to move a little bit beyond our timeline. However, we do not foresee any significant changes in the annualized returns. I would like to just highlight that you see under each green loan not annual returns but annualized, because returns will be coming in periods every 2 years, most likely, when we do the soil sampling and verify again the emissions removed and reduced. So I would encourage everybody to be a little bit patient. The returns that green loans promise are very high in my opinion, especially having in mind that you have all the security of the regular lending product, but you have returns of more than 20% in pretty much most cases, which is quite unseen in the market. It's more than many consumer loans give you. And at the same time, you have the beauty of having a positive impact on the environment and the planet.
I want to go into the return aspect in a minute. Before, I would like to pinpoint something from your Carbon Monthly, a new format where you share some insights into the developments of the voluntary carbon market. And the latest edition showcased Verra, as you said, like the partner that you collaborate with in this regard. They're undergoing some potential changes, new methodologies, which then will, not be applied to the current green loans that have already been financed. So you stretched out the importance of sticking to this kind of methodology that already that follow the criteria of the issued green loans. Can you explain maybe more in depth what the new methodology is all about, why Verra is going to that change, and ultimately, will there be some new things that will continue to prolong the issuance of carbon credits?
So Verra pretty much every year provides updated methodologies to several different products, because the one that we have is agricultural, but there's also one applied to oceans. There's also a couple applied to forestry, and they are constantly updated to increase the scientific rigor. It means that during the audit, they have some additional questions involved in the questionnaires. It means that on the data modeling side, they give different ratios to different values. There are a lot of minor changes that are happening, and usually the latest methodology applied is the most expensive considering the carbon credits. So the first ones will follow the methodology that was updated 2 years ago, if I remember correctly, and the new green loans will be within the new methodology that was presented a month ago.
Okay, so what is the current timeline? I understand like you had recently some field visits happening at some of your farmers, at the borrowers. How long, or what's the process like now moving forward, and how long will it take now ultimately to have the first carbon credits issued?
So Vera has a list of accredited auditors that they send to Lithuanian farmers from Germany actually. They were here for 1 week. They checked all our documentation. They checked the laboratory where we do the soil samples. And they also visited 8 randomly selected farmers to have extended interviews with them. We should get the results within a couple of weeks from the audit, and then we will be submitting all the documents to Vera for the verification. We are expecting that carbon credits will be generated hopefully by the end of the year. It might stretch into the first quarter of next year. And yeah, we really expect patience from everybody, as seeing that Vera is the organization that we cannot control ourselves. They're pretty much the main verifier in the whole market that are undergoing quite a lot of changes due to increased demand and increased supply of carbon credits.
When we now go back to the topic of the returns, at the initial, I think, forecast, it was like from the range from 12+% to more than 50%. Now, one particular question that ties into this is obviously what is the price for a carbon credit? And we discussed this already like off camera, that there's not a single solution or not a single answer to point out, look, this is the chart and this is where, carbon credits is the market price. So maybe can you go into detail how the carbon credit is put together in a sense?
Yeah, so you cannot see carbon credits price, a very specific price somewhere online, because there is a huge variety of carbon credits. And most of the transactions are happening over the counter, meaning through the brokers, and including ours as well. The price of carbon credit depends on quite a lot of criteria, including, for example, geographical location. So European carbon credits are naturally more expensive than the ones generated, let's say, in Southeast Asia or Africa or Latin America. Then there's a methodology that we talked about briefly. The newer it is, the more expensive carbon credits are. There's also how rigorous the process was. So all the carbon credits where soil sampling is involved are more expensive because the proof that carbon was actually removed or reduced is much stronger than, for example, in the case of avoiding of deforestation. So all these small bits and bytes create the price of carbon credits. And how we generate those estimations that we provide to all the investors under each loan, we're talking with a lot of brokers and a lot of big corporations that are buying carbon credits and getting the estimate. So we already received several offers to buy carbon credits. We did not sign them, any of them yet. We think that we can find a better price.
Can you talk specific numbers?
So we got an offer for €20 per carbon credit pretty much right away. So these are carbon credits that are not yet generated, but the company already wanted to buy all that we could generate for more than 10 years. We see that we could find a better price, and we get a lot of indications around 34, 45 euro. And once carbon credits are generated, we should be selling it around that price, especially having in mind that demand from corporations is growing, and just recently the current US President Biden supported voluntary carbon market and said that we need to push and encourage all the American corporations to actually abate their CO2 emissions by just going to voluntary carbon market and buying carbon credits.
To make this more tangible for investors, let's say what you the offer that you had on the table, that you refused, the €20 per carbon credit, how would this translate to an actual annualized return for investors? What's the reference point?
Yeah, that would have been between 12 and 15% interest for investors.
Okay, and when you target the range of 30 to 35 euro, where do you see like the return then?
Yeah, so that would be definitely 20 plus. That's the one that is indicated on each green loan. There are some where you see interest rate of less than 20, but I think big number is more than 20% interest rate.
Okay, so the annualized return 20+% for green loans is something you feel like is still achievable at this point in time?
Yeah, for sure. Annualized. So yeah, everybody needs to wait for profits to come for a little bit, but I think for 20+%, it's worth waiting.
Worth waiting. How is the overall, since you're very deep into this market, what's the overall market development in terms of the demand for carbon credits? Because there's always some noise on the left and right in terms of new regulations kind of changing the environment. There you have some, let's say, shady practices left and right. Locally, globally, where's the general demand going? And is it more like an upwards trend, a demand, and the scale goes up? Or where do you see like the trend going right now? And how volatile is it actually for investors to understand? Because you say like, there's so many factors you have to put into consideration, like, but where do you see like the general trend maybe?
Yeah, there is a little bit of volatility. However, the whole market is growing very quickly. You can find a lot of forecasts and estimations how the market will grow in the future. So in 2020, the whole voluntary carbon credits market was 2 billion. There's McKinsey recent estimation that it will reach 50 billion by 2030. And we see a lot of indications that the market will be growing, especially with the support of United Nations, US. Actually, France is a very interesting market with its own carbon credit system. So we see that voluntary carbon credit market is one of the main instruments to fight climate change and actually to move the money into the places that can remove carbon, and every ton of CO2 removed is pretty much becoming a type of a currency. And if you manage to remove or reduce your CO2 emissions, you have to be paid, and that's what's happening.
My personal feeling, I'm not sure if I can speak for all of investors, but there's always like this kind of greenish bubble and, you know, fighting climate change, and, you know, like there's definitely a good purpose behind it, but then I understand the skepticism from many investors that have a feeling like, okay, this is just a whole bubble that is now created with any substance to it. And do you feel like there's the same sentiment coming from certain investors, also from your community, where you feel like investors are a bit, let's say, more hesitant on green loans, or they're not trusting the issue as the process as much as, you know, you initially said, like you're asking for patience, but at the same time the process in itself seems to be somewhat complicated, that many investors start to maybe slightly disbelieve in the entire mission that is behind it?
Yeah, I totally understand that when you present green agenda, some people are becoming skeptical because they already saw quite a bit of initiatives that somehow didn't exceed their expectations or didn't meet their expectations. Here, I really love that in green loans there's a lot of science. So one thing is we're conducting soil samples and then bringing them to the lab to measure how much organic carbon the farm generated. So actually sequestered and hidden in the soil. So we do the initial soil sampling to check the base layer, and then 2 years or 1 year later, we go and check it again and measure how much is in there. which is a very scientific method to understand how much carbon you actually manage to hide from the atmosphere. And that gives a lot of comfort for all the partners that, okay, there is a rigorous methodology with quite many scientists involved. And actually, you were surprised that we're now a company of 65 people. So pretty much half of them are working with the carbon credits and providing green loans or working on the whole methodology. We also have agronomists who are working with the farmers, how they can improve their yields and improve the quality of the soil. So all these processes give quite a lot of confidence to all the partners. And retail investors is a very important part in our business, but we have a lot of other stakeholders, including the universities that we're talking to, including actually even agricultural ministries that are very interested in our products, because we conducted more than 10,000 soil samples already, making us the biggest database of soil quality in Lithuania and Poland at the moment. So even governments are interested, like what are the results now? And also we have institutional capital providers who are also interested, and we're pretty much, it feels like every quarter we have an ongoing due diligence.
Now that you mentioned, like, it's very much scientific and, it's backed by numbers, as a conclusion, would you also maybe confirm that maybe the process in itself is maybe too complicated for normal retail investors from the outside looking at it, that just wants to get, invest in some loans, understand what the business is behind, have its returns, ideally high liquidity, that maybe, there's, I don't know, I know you do a lot of, educational work with the borrowers already, to explain them the green loan concept, but do you feel like maybe this is too complicated also for investors to follow and understand the entire process that is behind?
We are investing in education of retail investors, and I believe that it's important. I think that voluntary carbon market is in very young days now, but it will reach the maturity when many people will find it interesting and useful to know. I believe that the scientific part and how those carbon credits are generated, there is vast methodologies. It's quite complicated. I'm not sure if retail investor needs to know it. We all, when making investment decision, decide how deeply do we want to get into it, and we never understand it 100%. So that's the same case here.
I think until it becomes maybe an issue of, as you said, like impatient investors asking, okay, where are the actual returns? And then, a more educated investor base could obviously have more empathy for understanding why processes are prolonged, or how long it takes to see an actual return on their investment. So I think that's then the balance in a way.
Yeah, but I think the general notion that climate change is accelerating and we have to fight it is there. There's no discussions anymore if climate change exists. We see every summer is getting hotter. So people have this notion, and then they tend to check, so what are the security measures in place? And what is good about green loans is that the security measures are pretty much the same as with regular lending product. So your downside risk is pretty low, and we have all those risks covered, that if the farmer decides to quit our green loan and just repay before carbon credits are generated, they're paying the regular interest rate that would be applied on the regular loan, and they pay it backwards. So
what, 10 to 13% or something?
Yes. So if that goes south, you get the protection. There's also, if there's a failure on our side that we do not manage to generate those carbon credits, then investors are getting 1.5% plus Euribor, which also you don't get that much of a downside risk because you also have the collateral. You have most of the loans are secured with personal liability. So from the risk perspective, it's like a regular lending product, but you have the opportunity of making 20 plus interest.
To close off the chapter with the green loans, I remember last year you set the target of financing 5 million euro in green loans. Did you manage this target? And what are the targets for this year?
Yeah, so we ended last year with 5 million invested. Now we have a little bit over 7.5 million invested in green loans. I see acceleration. There are some larger investors who are very interested in green loans. And I think that by the end of the year, we have a chance to reach 15 million.
15, or it will be a significant increase. How does it stack up against, let's say, normal agricultural loans that are not part of the carbon farming program?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sorry, no, just like you have the green loans,
yeah,
and let's say the underlying loan is actually an agricultural loan in that sense, right? But the green loans are part of the carbon farming program, from my understanding. So how does the ones that are not part of the program stack up against the actual green loans, volume-wise?
So we have those regular loans. We already issued more than 70 million of them. I think this year we're gonna issue around 20 million. Something should be around that level. We see a big performance, and we actually see that, well, we have 3 products. We offer 2 for the investors. So we have regular loan for farmers who are not ready to switch to sustainable agriculture. They need capital to evolve a little bit their farm, expand it, modernize it. Then when they reach the level where they can actually shift to sustainable agriculture, we support them with the green loan. And if they don't need financing to shift to the sustainable farming, we have carbon farming program for them. And they are joining just to generate carbon credits and create an extra revenue stream for themselves. So their investors are not participating, but that's also a big part of our business.
Okay. And the green loans, at what point do you feel like they will outgrow the regular loans? And is green loans the future of HeavyFinance?
Definitely, that's the future of HeavyFinance. I think that once we generate those first carbon credits, they will get sold. Everybody will get their returns. That will be a pivotal moment when actually we're gonna need to give many more green loans to the platform to be funded, and I would assume that from that point it will pretty quickly outgrow our regular lending.